Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today I am talking about how we can write a research proposal, and here we can discuss that there are normally two types of research proposals. One is a very brief research proposal, which is normally required by the professors or potential supervisor at the time of admission. It may be 2 pages research proposal, 3 pages research proposal, but it can be a very brief. And second one is detailed proposal, and now I'll be talking about detailed proposal after completing your coursework, or after some time period, a year or 1.5 year, after passing the comprehensive exam. Then you can write a detailed research proposal. I will take the example of Pakistan, what approach we normally follow here in Pakistan. Research proposal is comprised by 3 chapters, and it may be about 20 pages, it may be about 50 pages research proposal, and what are the major components which can be incorporated in research proposals. So as I have discussed in first part, I'll be talking about detailed research proposal, and there are normally 3 chapters, and we normally give the name of first chapter as an introduction, and it is recommended that this chapter may be written in present tense. And here we have some subheadings, and it's not necessarily that every university must be having or must be following these subheadings or guidelines. There might be a little bit variation in the layout, or how I can say that the subheadings, but the main theme and main focus is based on these major components. So chapter number 1 is named Introduction. Under the heading of introduction, we have to briefly describe and we have to briefly introduce chapter number 1. In this chapter, you can talk about this chapter is dealing with the major area, broad area, and significance of broad area, followed by research questions and research objectives. Research question, research objectives, problem is identified in this chapter, and research contribution. And actually this chapter here we are talking about how we can introduce the first chapter, what are the major components which can be discussed in this chapter. So it's the brief introduction of chapter, which actually is dealing with the major components. So we start from heading 1.1, that is background of research. And background of research, it depends on the university, that normally we use 3 to 5 pages, but it's not hard and fast rule. You can go for some less pages, or it can be more than 5 pages. It depends on university to university. But the important thing is what we have to discuss in this part. Actually, it's the introduction part, and we are talking about the background. In this, under the heading of background, what actually we have to write. This is very important, and how we can start our topic. Actually, before going to start write a research proposal, we have an extensive exploration of literature, and we explore some articles, related articles from top tier journals. And here we have to discuss, we can introduce the topic broad area with the support of proper citations or references. Here I'll be recommending only cite top tier journal, and don't go for the low quality journal to introduce your topic. So we start from the broad area, in which domain we are going to work, and what is that broad area. In this second phase, after discussing the broad area, then we have to explain the significance of broad area, how that the topic which we have selected is important and how it's important in today's era. And here we describe the variables in detail which have been selected based on the exploration of literature review, and significance of broad area can be discussed here. Then you can discuss variable and relate the selected variables which you are going to investigate in your research with the importance of broad area. Here I will be discussing that the selected variable must be interlinked with your main topic. However, your focus should be on the topic in this part. You can introduce 3 to 5 pages of background of your research, but the important part is what we have to discuss in this part. We have to focus on the broad area, then we have to explain the importance of broad area, then we can interlink our selected variables with respect to our topic, how those selected variables are important to investigate in this topic. Then next one is, every research is having, when we are going to go for research, there are 4 major parts, 4 major questions as per my understanding: what, why, how, and where. So what? The answer of what is broad area, what we are going to do, what are our variables. And the second one is why we are going to do research, that is the backbone of every research, that why you are intended to conduct research in this area. Here we have to investigate the problem, and we have to identify the problem, we have to identify the gap, what is the need of research. As we know, there are 2 types of research: one is basic research, second one is applied research. Either your research is contributing to the body of knowledge, identifying the basic type problem, or you are going to solve some real life problem, means you are going to go for some applied nature research. If problem is already existing related to the implementations of the already existing concept, we have to build the story. We should be very clear, either you are going for basic research or you are going to applied research. The contribution of basic research is towards the extension in the body of knowledge, and applied research always deals with the real life problem, it resolves the real life issues. So under the heading of problem identification, here you have to identify the problem, what actually problem is existing theoretically as well as practically. So if you want to extend the theory, but how we can extend the theory, we must be having the basic understanding, and we must be having the overall grip on the topic from its origin to its recent practices. Then you can identify the problem theoretically as well as practically. I mean, build a story by different ways based on the evidence gap. There are different types of gaps. This is very important heading. Here we have to build the story which can be based on different gaps, and these gaps can be evidence gap, there might be some practical problem, there might be knowledge gap, there might be practical knowledge gap, there might be, if you are extending the methodologies, you can if you are feeling that there are some problem related to methodologies, and you are utilizing different methodologies to investigate your hypothesis or objective, you can make a story related to methodological gap. If there are problems related to the applications of concept, then you can make a story related to the application of your selected variables. Then theoretical gap, if you think that theory is incomplete, and you wanted to extend the theory, and you can make the story in this perspective as well. There might be some population gap if the work has been done on different populations, and your topic investigates or targets some different population. You can make the story. Actually, here we are having different options to make to investigate the problem, to ensure the problem. So you can focus on these types of problems if your research is contributing or investigating or covering this type of problem. You can make the story in the perspective of evidence gap, knowledge gap, practical knowledge gap, methodological gap, empirical gap, theoretical gap, and population gap. Find the gap from recent researches, recent literature as well. Here we can mention the future directions or limitation of some recent studies. If some recent papers recommend you to conduct research as per their future direction, if that future direction is related to your broad area, you can incorporate that future direction, and you can make the story and develop the argument. You are following the future direction of blah blah blah, and you can put the reference here, and story can be built. Second, the main important is the local need. Here we have to investigate the local need, local scenario. That is very important. After identifying what we are going to do and what is the basic need, then you can relate what is the problem in hand in local scenario. Build the local scenario of your target region, country, industry, sector by comparing theory and literature, practice and actual situations. It's very important, and normally we normally have to localize our research. What the local problem is existing in hand related to the selected variables, how they are being practiced, how they are being implemented, and here we make the story, and we can go for the preliminary exploration, and based on the preliminary exploration we can build a story that what theory suggests, what the practices are there, if there is theory and practices are aligned or not, if there is gap, and the objective of our research is to bridge that gap, and here you can relate theory and practices, then you can localize your research, and this is the very important part of your research, and normally I name it's a backbone of your thesis or your research proposal. As we know that well identified problem is half solved, and if problem is not well identified, if we are not clear what is the problem in hand, either we are going to contribute in theory, either we are going to resolve a real life problem, we should be very clear. Then according to that gap, we frame our research, objective, research questions, problem statement as per the nature of our research. So we should be very clear while writing the problem identification, broad area, need of study. So here before going to this, I will be suggesting that before starting your proposal writing, you have to do a work. I normally name it as a fact sheet. Suppose you are working in any domain, you have to explore the recent studies from the top journals. You have to find some relevant articles related to your topic, and here we have to make a fact sheet. What actually the purpose of fact sheet is, actually you will be having the overall summary of literature, what has been already done and what variable have been investigated, what were the major techniques to investigate that problem, then what is the direction of literature, means major finding, what the findings are existing in literature, what the limitations of that research are, and how those limitations can be incorporated in future research. Suppose if you read a paper, there is a title of paper. You can mention the title here, and you can mention the author name and in which year it's been published and in which country that research has been conducted. What were the here you have to simply summarize. You have to write down the names. What are the variables which are used in that paper? You have to classify it. Either that paper is having dependent variable, independent variable, some control variable, either mediation or moderation. You have to just classify it and write their name. Then you can put your voice here. What is the critics? You can summarize a paper into few sentences. That critical review, critics, you can write the critics here, what actually that paper was and what it needs to be done. You can put your voice here, you can make a commentary if you are finding some loopholes and so on. To investigate that type of paper, there should be some techniques. Here you have to simply write the name of techniques, what techniques they have utilized to investigate their problem and to test the hypothesis or to answer the research objectives. After applying the analysis or techniques, they found some there will be some major findings. You have to simply bullet what are their major findings. After that, from the conclusion part, the last part of the conclusion, you can find the future direction and limitations of that paper. I suppose in second paper, third paper, 5th paper and 6th paper, if you go through 10 research paper related to your area, then here you can summarize those research paper. I normally name it as a fact sheet, record of paper reading. Why this activity is important? Because this activity is important before to start your work. Here I suppose after 20 papers, 10 papers, 12 papers, 15 papers, you will be mentally prepared that here actually that is about the brainstorming. That is about brainstorming. After going through 12 relevant papers, you will be able to know that whose are the major players working in this area. You will be able to know about the author's name, big players of this area. Then you can know about in which year that research has been conducted and in which countries that research has been done. After that, you will be able to know that what are the major variables which have been investigated in these 10 to 20 papers. And obviously we will be having we have to select some variables, and there might be repeated variable in different papers, and every paper, it's not possible that every paper is having different variables. There might be one variable common, there might be two common variables, there might be all variable different to each other. But in the end, I suppose there are 20 different variables which are used in 10 papers, 20 papers, 30 papers. I can write the number here that how many variables are used in the in these variables. Okay, and I suppose there are 20 variables. And do I have to work on 20 variables? Here we can choose few of the variables. Okay, we are selecting the variables from literature. Then here we have the critics. Then we can relate what the critical points are there related to these variables. Then the next column is techniques. I suppose there are 8 different techniques which are used to investigate those variables. But we are not supposed to apply those all techniques in our research. And here is also major findings. Different variables, different papers have some common variables, same variables, and we can look at the direction of literature. In which direction literature is going, either it's going to have it's having positive relation or negative relation. What are the major findings? We actually have the crux of these papers in this fact sheet. This fact sheet will give you the direction, in which direction we can go for, and this further tells us that what types of variable have been investigated and what actually we have to do, what techniques are utilized to investigate that topic, and what are the major findings, what is the trend of literature, and what future directions are there. So this fact sheet, I suppose we select 5 variables, and those 5 variables based on the literature review, and I also incorporated one of the variable from recent studies future direction, and then we can focus on those variables which I have to work in my research. So why I did this activity? If we look at the problem identification, what is the problem identification? Here we have to build the story which may be based on evidence gap, which may be based on knowledge gap, which may be based on practical knowledge gap, methodological gap, empirical gap, theoretical gap, or population gap. So if we look at the fact sheet, what is the fact sheet? Fact sheet also tells about these components, and you can make the story, you can support your arguments here, that you can relate your arguments with the literature, what the problem is in hand, how your work is different from already existing work, and you can make a good story here. If you are incorporating the future direction of any research, then you can make a story here. What is this? Find the gap from recent studies. I mean, you can consider the future direction in your topic of any of the recommended recent study, but you have to target always top tier journal, reputed journal, recent studies if you are taking into account any future direction. Then if once variables are selected, broad area is selected, simply obviously you will be applying that broad area, those variables, that topic into any population. Okay, so theory is here. What is fact sheet? That is about contextualization, conceptualization. Conceptualization is here. Then you have to investigate the problem into local. You go to local, your population, and you target your population. Then you go for the local industry, and you relate. You can ask the question. Here you can go for the open-ended question. You can ask some statement, you can extract some statement that theory suggests this, what's your point of view? After getting some responses from your target audience, then you will be having the actual situation in your hand. Theory is here, which you have extracted from the fact sheet, and here is practical situation. What is, then you can relate, theory suggests this. Overall response from the target respondents is here, your population, from where you have took their view. Theory is here, respondent response is here. Then you can relate what theory suggests, what is the application. If they are not aligned, if theory and practices are not aligned, then there is need to do research, and your research can bridge this gap, and the objective of every research is to bridge the gap, to resolve the problem. Once problem is not identified, then how we can claim that problem is solved? Here we should be very careful while identifying the problem. So as we are used to listen, R&D, research and development, the ultimate objective of any research is to bring some policy implications, to resolve some problem, and keep in mind what sort of problem I have already identified, I have already stated. Either you are going to identify the problem in theory, either you are going to identify the problem in practical side or empirical side. So once problem, if the theory, the problem is related to theory, you are extending the body of knowledge. So there will be development in theory. If there is a problem related to real life issues, then you are going to resolve the practical type of problem. So R&D, research and development, the ultimate objective of any research is to bring development. When there will be development if there is a problem. there is a problem, and problem related to theory, problem related to empirical side or practical side, real life problem. So related to your selected variables, not my problem, not your problem. I am talking about problem related to your selected variables, your broad area topic. Then you can make a good story. Obviously, if there is problem in hand, after conducting the research, then our objective is to resolve that problem, to bring theory and practices align. Then we can give a good policy recommendation to our stakeholder, and once they implement those implement those policy recommendations, then problem can be solved. Then obviously there will be development. That is the concept behind R&D. The objective of R&D is researchers. What is research? Actually, if we focus on this word, again, search, find, redo. Why we redo? Why we reinvestigate? Why we refine? If there are some problems, there are some limitations, there is a gap, then we go for research. Why I'm focusing at this heading at this point? Because we normally unable to identify the problem, and we should be very clear in which type of problem we are having. You can make a good story in this part, and it's very important. If problem is not well identified, then our research will be we will be nowhere. So in your defense or in your viva, that the first question which is normally being asked: what is new in your work? What is problem in hand? What is the motivation behind the selection of this topic? What are the reasons? Why did you select this topic? What is the gap? So this is the answer of those questions. So we must be very clear related to this heading. I think we can make a story, we can give some citations, we can put some references to claim, to support our claim or argument, and it should be well clear and well identified. Then next one is problem statement. Normally we normally confuse here. It's problem identification. Here we build this story. Here we discuss everything in detail. But here that is a problem statement. That is crux. What is actual problem in hand? Here you talk about half paragraph. We normally don't cite, put some citations here. There is no need to put references. It's the actual problem, crux problem in hand. So problem statement comprises only on two parts. One is logical part, second one is required part or desired part. Here you can put few sentences, 2 sentences, 3 sentences, 5 sentences, but not more than half paragraph or 1 paragraph, half page. You may focus on the logical statement and then required or desired statement. Logical statement, suppose what theory suggests, what is the logic between for example, I took the example, better the HR practices, better will be the employee performance. That is a logical statement. If these HR practices are not being properly implemented, obviously employee performance will be low. That is problem. That is required statement. If we took an example of financial management practices, better the financial management practices, better will be the organizational performance. It's a logical statement. It's a literature-based statement, and logic, that is logical statement. What is required statement? But these practices are not properly being implemented in the target industry, in target region, in target country, in target sector. That is the objective of this research, to resolve this problem, and which is the concern of this research, that is required or desired statement. Here we have to focus on, I summarize here again, we have to focus on logical statement, what logic suggests, and what is required, what is the required statement, what is problem in hand. You can extract, we can draw this statement from the problem identification. If story is well identified, problem is well identified, then our problem state will be more clear and precise. Then we write these research questions, it's not necessarily we have to follow this order. Research question can be later the research objective, but research objective can be before from the later from the research question. Drive the here we write the research questions. We drive the research question from problem statement. You may start by the word. How we can write, why, where, what, to what extent, to whom, etc. These are the normally most commonly used word, but it depends the nature of your research. Either will be how is the best fit to start from your start your research objective, by how, by why, where, what, but it totally depends on the nature of your research. Then we can choose the words as per our research. You can write the research questions and bullets, and then we have heading number 1.5, that is research objectives or major purpose of research. Write the constructive and well clear research objectives. We should be very clear that what is the main research objective of our research and what is the main research objective. And normally we start the research objective by what, to. And most commonly used words in the literature are, but these words are related to the words which we have selected for in research questions. We can start from to explore, to determine, to find, to measure, to highlight, to examine, to judge. There might be, but it depends. What is the your study? We can relate with these words with the nature of your research. What is the most related word as per your research? And there might be some, if we are having the PhD study, there might be some developmental aspects of each objective. What is developmental aspect? If your first objective is achieved, what is the outcome? Okay, what will be the development after if your first objective is achieved? Then you can mention the developmental aspect of your objectives as well. Okay, you might use the bullets here as well. Then there is a significance of your research or importance of your research, contribution of research. It's not a hard and fast rule. You have to follow. You have to write only 1.5 or 2 pages. It depends on your research. Discuss the importance, worth, rationale of your research. Remember, students, scholars, that if our problem is well identified, then if problem is resolved, then there will be outcome, there will be benefit of that research. So what kind of benefit extracted from your research? What will be the benefit from your research? Who will be the beneficiary of your research? What kind of benefit is extracted from your research? Who will be the beneficiary? And what will be the benefit towards academia as well as practical contribution of your research? We have to very clear. If your problem is well identified, then the outcome of your research will be very clear and precise. So, who will be the beneficiary or beneficiaries of your research? Here you will be talking about key stakeholders of your research. So, here you can make more comprehensive, you can provide the policies to your stakeholders, and the first is about your practical contribution as well as academic contribution. What kind of policies can be given by your research and how those policies can be implemented. It's important, and normally we are used to ask this question, or we are used to listen this question: what is the contribution of your research? How your research is important, and what is the motivation of your research, and either what is the contribution of your research? This is the heading which can answer those questions. Then you can write the scope of research. What is scope? That is generalizability of your research, how the results will be generalizable to related fields and related disciplines, related sectors, related industries. You can make a story here, what is the scope of your research, how these results will be generalizable towards other researchers, other disciplines. That is all about chapter number 1, and we normally focus on the 5 headings. In the end, you can also mention the structure of your research. 1.8, you can mention, it's up to you. You can place the structure of research that is about the chapter number 2, chapter number 3. Chapter number 2 is about the literature review, theoretical framework, hypothesis development, and so on. And chapter number 3 followed by chapter 3, which is related to methodology and so on. Here you can mention the structure of your research if your supervisor or your advisor suggests you can mention here as well. Now I'll be talking about chapter number 2. It's very important, and normally we give less weightage to this chapter, literature review. If we are not well read, then how we'll be able to extract, how we'll be able to understand the theory and underpinnings, and how we'll be able to understand the trend of literature, what are the limitations of literature, and how the variables are integrated, and what theories are used, what are the underpinnings, how the arguments are developed, and what is the problem in hand. All this is related to literature review. And what is literature review? Actually, we look at the fact sheet. What is fact sheet? That is about literature. That is the summary of literature. You can relate the things. You can take the things from your fact sheet to fix in the literature as well as in your introduction part. In literature, chapter number 2, name is literature. In first paragraph, you have to briefly describe about this chapter, as we have discussed in chapter number 1, introduction part. Here you can introduce your chapter. This chapter deals with the literature review, followed by the hypothesis development or theoretical framework, and hypotheses are developed, and so on. So I normally divide this chapter into few subparts. First part, I will recommend you students to focus on the introductory part of your topic. First part of the literature review should be introductory, introduce the topic from its origin, from where that concept was introduced, who was introduced that concept with the passage of time, what is the extension in that concept, that topic, those variables, what are their baseline theories you can discuss here, most relevant theories. Then you can talk about its determinants, dimensions, facets, constructs, everything related to that variable or related to that major topic you have. Here we are going to introduce actually. Then in this part, explain your variables by the support of citations and references. Again, I'll be talking that we have to follow the top tier journal. I mean, bombard this part, every paragraph with citations, relevant and most authentic citations, references, which are most authentic studies which are published in top tier journal. So I will be discussing that in this part. The first part of introduction literature, you have to discuss the origin of your research, from your introduce your topic in detail. Focus on the description of your variable, focus on the underpinnings and how those variables are related to and what are the origin of selected variable. In second part, here we talk about the findings of previous literature. If you are having theoretical framework, if you are having some independent variable, dependent variable, mediation, moderation, control variable, here you have to discuss the findings of previous researches and write the findings of previous studies here. This is very important. If this part is well introduced, then we'll be we'll be nicely managing the arguments development. We'll be able to develop the arguments here, and you have to develop the arguments based on the findings of previous searches, and here you can support your argument with underpinnings. I'm putting here the word that is statement, put your voice. There are findings of different studies, and you can develop the argument based on underpinnings, and here you can make the critics. Put your voice. What is your idea? What is your thought? What are your findings? What is your point of view? I mean, you make a logical and constructive commentary here based on the findings of previous researches. If we look at the fact sheet, we have the column that is critical review. So what is critical review? Actually, that is about critical review between the findings, between the ideas of two scholars, two studies. You can make this you can make a critical commentary or constructive commentary, logical commentary here based on the different findings of previous research. So in literature, we normally use second form, and the most widely used words in literature review are, but it depends what word suits in which statement. We normally use elaborated, declared, discussed, highlighted, examined, explored, argued, found, focused on, determined, revealed, investigated, described, showed, used, predicted, studied, developed, follow the approach used by, documented, favored this, notice that, studied the determinants earlier researchers relied on, suggested, reinforced. These are the most commonly used words in the literature, and here we have to select the most appropriate word as per our discussion. In the end of literature review, before going to start the theoretical framework, you have to write the summary of literature. How many variables are used in your research? Okay, are used in your research? What relationship is found between those variables in the literature? Either there is positive relationship or negative relationship. What is the gap? What is the exact gap in this literature? How your research is different from the already already existing literature? How this study extends the body of knowledge? It's the heart of chapter, that is the overall summary. So we can divide this chapter into three components. First one is we can introduce the topic from its origin. In this part, we can find the literature findings of previous studies. Based on those findings, we develop the argument and support our argument with underpinnings or theories. Then we can put the commentary here, and we can support our argument from underpinnings and so on. And we can use these words, but it depends which word suits with your research. In the end of literature, before your theoretical framework, we can summarize the literature here, that what are the major variables which are used in this research, what are the highlights of literature towards their relationship, and how what is the exact gap, and how this research is different from the previous studies, and how this research extends the body of knowledge. And you have to focus on these points. You can write a couple of pages on this point. Very important. If you have primary research, or you are working in marketing and HR or behavioral finance or general management side, here we can develop the theoretical framework. Theoretical framework, we draw a figure which shows the independent mediating variable, moderating variable, intervening variable, dependent variable. It depends if you are having independent variable and dependent variable. You can draw a picture and place the sign on the arrows. Either there can be positive relation, there can be negative relation. If we look at this, here we have mentioned that what is the exact relationship between two variables in the literature review, and we have to put the sign on the arrows based on the literature review. Either there is positive relation or negative relation. We can develop the theoretical framework here. Based on the theoretical framework, we develop the hypothesis or hypothesis statements. We develop the hypothesis statement based on the underpinnings and argument development. Here you may write few pages before to draw the hypothesis statements. So always I'll be suggesting develop the directional hypothesis. Why directional hypothesis? Because we are putting the direction and theoretical framework on the variables, and we are very clear here what is the relationship between variables. We have also discussed the relationship of variables here. So then we have to develop the directional hypothesis. Either there is a positive relationship or negative effect of independent variable on dependent variable. If you have mediation or moderation, you can develop the hypothesis accordingly. If we look at fact sheet, we have the column of findings. So this is the trend of literature. Findings are the trend of literature. Either there is positive relation or negative relation between the variables. So again, we are using, we can extract, we can take the, some insights from fact sheets to develop our hypothesis, to develop the theoretical framework, all while writing the empirical side of literature review. So this is about chapter number 2. Normally in finance literature, we normally don't use the theoretical framework. We focus on the hypothesis development based on the literature review. So chapter number 3, that is about methodology. If you are in proposal phase, and we are talking about proposal, and we normally write this chapter into future tense, and you may use future tense in this chapter, almost use will, shall, or mixture of present tense also can be there. First I will be discussing, if your research is primary data research, what can be the major heads in this chapter. We start from the research design. Explain what research design is about your research. What will be the research design of your research? We can first define, or then we can discuss the research design of our research, nature of investigation, what is the nature of investigation of your. Here we normally follow the Saunders et al. 2008 onion. There are different layers of like onion layers. There are different layers of research philosophy, approaches, research strategy, research choice, time horizon, research techniques and procedure. Discuss each layer and relate with your research. For example, first here we can talk about research philosophies, and then we can relate what research philosophies will be used in your research, what will be the research approach of your study, then what strategies will be used, what will be choice of your research, then time horizon, then you can talk about what will be the techniques and procedures of your research. You can discuss each layer and relate with your work, but be brief, don't go far in detail while discussing these layers. Most you have to focus, normally you have to mainly focus on your research approach, philosophy, strategy, choice, time horizon and so on. Next one is population of your research. It's very important part of this chapter. You may focus on the following points. We can start from the definition. Everyone knows about the population. It's not important either you define the population or not. Then you have to discuss what is the population of your research. That is very important. So first we have to discuss what will be the population, who will be the target respondent, what will be the industry which you will be going to investigate in your research, why and how the target population is important for your research. Here we have to relate with our objective of our research, and we have identified the problem. We have to discuss the local need. That is important. Here we can relate why, how the target population is important, relate with your study objective and local need, as we have discussed in chapter number 1. That is important. What was the criteria behind the selecting the targeting the population? What are the special characteristics? we should be very clear about this, about your population. Then if population is known, either population is known or unknown, if it's known, do we have the population frame? We have to discuss everything in detail in this part. Then for selecting is appropriate sample size, and appropriate sample size, we are having sampling techniques. Here we are talking about the methodology of primary data research. So sampling techniques, you have to describe the techniques very briefly, what kind of techniques are there and what will be the your research techniques. What will be the sampling technique of your study, where the selected technique is important. You have to justify your study, how it's important. A clear understanding is required. We normally, scholars are, I found that normally students are unclear about their sampling techniques towards the selection of appropriate sample size. Then sample size, for selecting an appropriate sample size, we normally use sampling, and there are different types of sampling you can describe. Then you can discuss the most appropriate sampling technique of your research. So maybe focused on the following points: what is the sample and what will be the appropriate sample size of your research, your study, how the sample size is calculated. I recommend use some statistical formula to calculate the appropriate sample size. Here you can give the references of some different criteria like higher, and different scholars have provided some cutoff point or rule of thumbs or threshold points, threshold values. Then you can give the reference of your sample size, where that sample size is sufficient and how it's been calculated. Then the most important thing is 3.5, that is research instrument, measure or research tools. Very important part. If data, how we will be collecting the data, what will be the instrument which can be used to collect the data. Here you can talk about the research instrument. Then how many variables, here we will be talking about. We have already discussed, I started my discussion from 4 points: what, why, how and where. Chapter number 1 deals with what, chapter 2 deals with what, problem identification deals with why, that is the answer of why. Then chapter number 3 is about how, what will be our methodology, and where, that is population. What is population? That is where, answer of where. And who will be target respondent? That is answer of where. And how we will be going to collect data, that is the answer of how. Okay, how many variables? We are very clear that how many variables are in our research. If we look at the theoretical framework, if we look at hypothesis development, their variables are discussed. Here you have to describe your variable, and then with the help of citation, then you can differentiate the independent variable, dependent variable. If you are having mediator, moderator, you have to identify, you have to differentiate variable by their names. Then is scale or instrument questionnaire is self-developed? It's very important. Normally students claim that we have developed the instrument, we have developed the questionnaire. But my question is that either you are introducing some new variable. If you're not introducing some new variable, then why you are going to introduce a new scale? Yes, you can modify, you can extend that scale based on the literature review. If you have the understanding about that variable, theory is here, you have the grip on previous knowledge, then you can construct the instrument. Then if instrument is self-developed or it's been adopted or adapted from previous studies, we have to mention the reference. So we have to give the reference here. It's very important. It shouldn't be blank that to whom we have adopted or we have selected the instrument or scale. If adopted or adapted from the past studies, then give the references. Justify that how accurately it will capture the responses in local scenario. it's important, very important. Then we have to modify the research instrument as per the understanding of our respondent. And here we can write how many items, how many statements or questions are used against each variable. Okay, in this head we normally focus on what will be the research instrument, what are variable are used, and we have to differentiate. Instrument is adopted, adapted, self-developed, and modified. We have to write all about that instrument and how many questions are used to measure the each variable, and we have to justify that the select adopted or developed or adapted instrument, how much it will be able to capture the response from the local scenario. Here you can translate the instrument according to the response approach of your target audience. If it needs to transfer into local language, you can transform your instrument. Then you can talk about the which software or tool will be used to analyze the data. Once data is collected through a refined instrument or clear instrument, then we have to apply some statistical techniques, and those statistical techniques, which software will be used to extract the results. If primary research, we normally use SPSS, MO, Smart PLS, very recommended, Smart PLS, M+, and different other softwares, but it depends which kind of software you are using to analyze your research objectives or to determine the research hypothesis and so on. Before going to launch the final survey, here you can talk the pilot testing. Instrument validity. Instrument validity, that is important. Before launching the instrument, before collecting the data, instrument should be valid. If instrument is not valid, then our response, our data will be not reliable. If data is not reliable, results will be misleading, and then you will be unable to capture the actual picture, and will be unable to relate theory and practices. That will be misleading. Results will be misleading. Hypothesis testing will be not more valid, and policy implication will be not actual. So instrument should be valid. So how we can check the validity of instrument? You can mention face or content validity, and who will check the face or content validity? Expert of the area. You can take his or her view to capture the validity of your instrument. Then you can capture the validity of instrument through numerical measures. There are some different numerical measures like convergent validity, discriminant validity, or nomological validity. These are some there are some cutoff point, there are some threshold values. Based on those cutoff point or threshold values, you can make the refine your instrument. Once instrument is refined based on content or face validity, second one is numerical based measures, which are having decisions based on some threshold values, cutoff points, then you can launch your final instrument. Obviously that you will be collecting data from refined instrument. That is important. Okay, after that we have the heading that is procedure of data collection. It's all about your approaches towards data collection. How will be your approach, what will be your approach, and how will be collecting the data. Either you will be collecting the data through instrument. Obviously we are using instrument, it's primary research. Then what will be our approach? Either you will be visit the respondent physically, or we can use Google form, personal survey, email, mail, social media. What will be your approach? You have to discuss your approach of data collection very clearly or in detail in this part. Then after collecting the data, we have to analyze the data. What will be the techniques? What will be the most appropriate techniques for your study to analyze the data? Look, I have mentioned that in in fact sheets, there is a column that is technique. And obviously we select some variable from literature, and those variables are already been investigated in the literature review in different papers, and they have utilized some techniques. And here you know about the techniques, what techniques have been used in the literature to investigate those variables. Yes, here you can mention, you can select the most appropriate techniques to analyze the hypothesis for hypothesis testing. So then after selecting the most appropriate techniques, then you have to justify that why that technique is important. What is the purpose? Justify the selected techniques. Measure of normally in primary data research we normally use two major heads. One is measure of differences when you are going to take the non-parametric test and the parametric and non-parametric test. And second one is measure of association. Here you can talk about regression, correlation, direct impact, indirect effect, mediation analysis, moderation analysis. But in measure of differences, you go for independent sample t-tests, one-way ANOVA, two-way ANOVA, mean differences, and different tests you can go. But it depends on your objective of your study. Your objective should be very clear. If your objectives are clear, your technique should be very clear, your population, your sample. This is all about methodology once we are having primary data research. After that, if if the students finance or economic students, we normally deal with secondary data. If you have secondary data research, then what will be the major headings of chapter number 3? Normally we start from the research design, explain what is the research design, and already I have discussed in primary data research design. What will be the design of your research, nature of research? You can talk about the Saunders et al., Saunders onion, like research philosophies, research approaches, strategies, and so on. You can relate with your topic, your research as well. Then the most important is data here. Primary research, we were having some other heading, that was population. Here we are having heading data. What is the target region? Here we have to clearly identify what is the target region, what is the target country, what are the target countries, what is industry, what is sector. We have to clearly identify. What is important, why it's important to select that region. We should be very clear why we selected this region, what is industry or sector. Strong justifications are required here. You can give these recommendations, justification here. Then we can talk about what will be the frequency of data. Either it's yearly data, monthly data, quarterly data, annually data, daily data, what is the frequency of data, and what will be the time span of data. Then here we have to mention the sources of data, from where we have extracted the data. Always give the very authentic sources of data. Like we normally, if we talk about equity data, we normally use the data stream. Like you are required banking sector data, we go for the bank scoop and so on. There are different data bases from where we can extract the data. And if you are having time series data, if you are working in time series or economics, we normally extract data from WDI, World Development Indicator, or World Bank website, and so on. And discuss the importance of data with respect to your study variables. Very important. And we should be very clear to whom we collect the data, either the nature of data is panel or time series. You should, because as per the nature of data, we will be selecting the techniques. Okay. Data of what? Data for variables. And we have discussed the variables in our introduction part, in literature as well as methodology, at the start of methodology. In primary research, we normally use the heading instrument and measure. Here we normally use statistics or variables measurement in primary research. In secondary research, here we have to describe the variables with proper references, proper citations, and all variables have been described here. Discuss the importance of selected variables with reference to outcome variables. What is outcome variable? That is our dependent variable. We can make a discussion here. We can discuss the variable. We have to introduce the variables. Why that selected variables important with respect to our dependent variable. Normally I am focusing on with respect to control variable. Here we have to discuss the control variable, and normally we don't discuss the control variable in our literature review part. Here you can discuss the control variable with your with respect to your dependent variable. Explain the control variable and their importance towards your outcome variable, control variable. And the most important thing is the proxies or formulas or measures of your variable. Very important. How many proxies are being used? In fact sheet we have a column that is technique or variables, and here you can generate a column proxies or measure of variable. Okay, or in technique you can also place here the proxies of variable column. So we write the proxies or formula of variables or variables with proper citation, with proper references. Use different proxies to check the robustness of results. You have to mention very carefully and clearly that what are the proxies which are used for main analysis and what will be the proxies to measure a variable to check the robustness of your results. We should be very clear. Then in the end of this head we can draw a table, that is summary of variable. Draw a summary table of variables. There might be 4 columns. You can write the name of variable. Then you can, here in this head, here you can in the summary, here you can write the name of all variables. If you have 10 variables, 20 variables, you can draw the lines here. Write the full name of variable. Then you can write the abbreviations of variables. Here you can describe variable and you can put the proxy, and here are the sources, means citation. Look, in primary data I was talking about, while you are talking about the measures, you have to give the reference. Here is also reference. Why this and how before these measures are used by different scholars, you can give the reference here. You can already these variables have been tested here. Write about the variable, their formulas, equation, etc, dependent and independent variable. You can write this here before to draw the table. Then the subhead of this part, or you can make a separate separate heading, major heading of research model or mathematical equation. Draw a mathematical equation which describes the dependent and independent variable as well as control variable, and you can put the abbreviations of variable in the equation. Keep in mind the subscript as per the nature of data. Either it's panel data, time series panel, and so on. You should be very careful about subscript, and you can, after once you draw the equation, after writing the equation, then you can write a note below the equation that what abbreviation is actually related to. Okay, then the next one is techniques for data analysis. What will be the most appropriate techniques for data analysis? You can discuss the assumptions, background, importance of selected techniques, but every techniques, it depends upon your variable, the objective of your study, the nature of your study. We always select the technique for data analysis as per the objective of our research. There are thousands of techniques, and it depends that what techniques is most appropriate to your research. Support these selected techniques through with methodological literature. If you have selected a technique, it should be well supported by the literature. Here you can give the some references behind the selection of this technique, that Mr. A conducted research on this topic and he or she has used this technique towards data analysis. Then for robustness of results, you can also use different techniques as well, but it depends on the nature of your research and objective of your research. This is all about chapter number 3 of once if you are having secondary data research. So major heads are research design, data, then statistics or variable measurement, then mathematical equation, techniques. After that, we have reference list. You can put the reference list from next page. As per university manual, you follow the university manual, and normally we follow widely APAs followed. Then the citations, running text references must be included in reference list, and I'll be suggesting you can go for some referencing managing software. You can manage your references through different softwares like EndNote. You can use Mendeley, you can use Zotero. These are different softwares which can be used to manage the references. So the important thing is you have to include all citations or running text citation in your reference list. If you think that if something is not cited in your in literature or in the body of your paper and you wanted to put in the reference list, you can give the head with name of bibliography, or you can say that for further reading these references can be managed. After referencing, we have appendix. We have an appendix part. For primary research, in proposal writing, we have to place appendix that is a questionnaire. What is a questionnaire? That is an instrument. An instrument normally contains two parts. One is related to demographic part, and you can write about the introduction of yours and your university and the primary objective of your research and your particulars if someone wants to contact you while giving the response or filling the questionnaire. There are two parts of questionnaire. First part deals with demographics. It depends which demographics you wanted to keep in your research, like gender is normally used, age, experience, your income level, but it depends on your study which demographics you wanted to keep in your research. The most important is second part that deals with the research variable, and normally we design the instrument in this way. For example, you have 5 variables in your research and which scale it's being used and which weight it's been given. For example, what one is strongly disagree, 2 is disagree. To whom we took this information? We took this information from instrument heading. We have already discussed there which scale is used. Either it's Likert scale, nominal scale, ratio scale, or interval scale. What scale is there? You have already mentioned in your chapter 3 instrument part. 1 is strongly disagree, 2 is disagree, 3 is neutral, 4 is agree, 5 is strongly disagree. This is an example. We are taking an example. It depends on your research. Here you can write the name of first variable, then you can place the items, questions of first variable. For example, 3 question, 5 question, 8 question. It depends how many questions are there. To measure your variable, you can place the questions here, and you can keep blank this part, and your respondent will give his or her reply under the specific whatever he or she feels the reasonable. Then you can write the name of second variable if it's applicable. Then you can place the questions here and so on. That is the overall design to how we can design our questionnaire. That is about how we can design our questionnaire. Then what can the appendix part of secondary data research? You can mention the list of industries here, list of firms, list of countries. That can be the part of appendix you can place here in your proposal. It's the detailed proposal. Once completing your coursework or passing your comprehensive, you always prepare your detailed research proposal in these lines. I hope these guidelines will help you while preparing your research proposal, and it can be used at any level. These guidelines, either at undergrad level, master level, PhD level, or once you write any postdoc proposal, detailed proposal, you can write there. But in postdoc, it's a little bit different. Okay, I was talking about always we have to cite top tier journals. Here is the list of top tier journals from the domain of business studies or management studies, and there are different databases which differentiate the journals ranking. There are different ranking bases which rank the journals. For example, journal of if you talk about journal management, Academy of Management Review, Academy of Management, Management Sciences, these are the top tier journals. I have the list of these journals. If you are working in finance domain, these are the major finance journals, and Journal of Finance, Journal of Financial and Quantitative Analysis, Journal of Banking and Finance, Review of Finance, and so on. These are the top tier journals which can be targeted while extracting the literature. And economics domain, these are the major economic review of economic study, American Economic Review, and there are a lot of major journals. Then these are journals belonging to marketing domain, and there are sub-domains, accounting, auditing journals, then like industrial organization, main journals, top tier journal. These are the prime journals of business strategy and so on. And always cite the paper following the link of journals. You can economic literature, the journal which are indexed in economic literature, you can follow those journals. Here I normally use the list of ABDC listed journals. ABDC, Australian Business Dean Council, top ranked journals, and there are normally 4 categories: A star, A, and B and C category journals. A star is a prime category journal, then A, then B. These are considered reasonable. B is considered reasonable, but I'll be recommending go for the A star or A journal while exploring the articles. Journal of Finance, that is top journal, and here is the code of journal, and I took this information from ABDC list, Journal of Banking and Finance, and so on. And ABDC, in this list I am actually talking about finance journal. This list is ABDC list is I have extracted the journal from the domain of finance. All categories like A star, A category journals, then B category journals, and so on. I will share this list in the description of this video. I will provide the link. You can download the list of these journals. You can download the sample of fact sheet. I will also upload these steps for synopsis writing there, and there is also a picture that is related to some research. You can also these links if you wanted to download books. These links can be used, for example LabGen, and you can write these links in your browser. Then you can go for the relevant. You can download the books. There are some links for how we can search the article. If you are not having the access of if you are not having the subscription, you can use these links while downloading the articles. These are also journals articles. You can download from these links. Then for English correction, we normally choose Grammarly. And article editing, different databases are providing the article editing services like Mendeley, like here. These are normally used article. And how we can check the plagiarism? We normally use Turnitin and different other softwares. Actually, the purpose to share this picture is there are different links which can be helpful for researchers, for early career researcher, and conferences. For conference, these are the major conferences domains. You can put the this link into browser, then you can go for accordingly. I will also upload this one. Now the last one is a very brief proposal. It's about PhD and postdoc. While you are going for supervisor search, or you wanted to take consent from supervisor, then normally supervisor suggests you to send me a brief proposal, which can be a 2-page proposal, which can be a 3-page proposal. Or while you write supervisor or professor for postdoc or admission or postdoc consent or PhD admission, they normally ask you a brief proposal, not a detailed proposal. Detailed proposal is later phase. After 1 year of your PhD or 1.5 years, that is detailed proposal. At the time of admission, your potential professor or supervisor can ask you for a brief proposal. What can be the brief proposal? 2 pages proposal, 3 pages proposal. We have already discussed the major points in detailed proposal, but here I can repeat again. First of all, we put the title. Title should be very precise. Normally, students put all the name of variable, all variables in the title, name of all variables in the title. No, just focus on your major main point, main focused variable. You can it should be very brief, precise, and fascinating, the title. Then what actually we have to write in the proposal? In first part, introduction part, maximum 1.5 page or maximum 2 page. Don't go for more than that. But what actually we have to write in this part? Here you have to discuss the significance of broad area, why that the selected topic is important. What is the exact problem in hand? 1 or 2 paragraphs are enough, and ensure how much your work is different from the existing work. Just focus on these points only. Importance of broad topic, what is the significance of that area, and what is actual problem in hand, and how this work is different from the previous already existing work. Then 1.1, you can mention your major research objective or research question only. Then 1.2 can be significance of your research. But in this heading, introduction heading, you can place some references, but references from the top tier journal, prime journal. Don't refer any low category journal. Significance, half page, 1 page, you can write the contribution of your your research, what it can be contributing in the body of knowledge, how it will be the importance, who will be the beneficiary, what kind of benefit, and how it can be the beneficial for the stakeholders. Then the second head, I normally recommend write methodology. Don't go for the literature. In introduction part, you can put some references. You can also talk a little about the baseline theory, a very brief about the most relevant baseline theory or underpinning. That's why I skip the literature, because it's 2 pages or 3 pages proposal or synopsis. In methodology, maximum 1 or 2 page, If you are having primary data research, simply write the target population, sampling technique, sample size, and their importance where these population, sampling technique, and sample size will be accurate. Then talk about one paragraph about instrument data analysis techniques. That should be very brief. If you are having the secondary research, first heading could be data, write the exact data, sources of data, time span, frequency of data, nature of data. Then you can describe the variables, means their formulas and proxies. After that, you can draw the econometric model or mathematical equation. Then you can very briefly describe the techniques. Always, I'll suggest not go for more than 3 pages, 3.5 pages. In the end, you can put the references, but these references should be from the top tier journal. I think this lecture will help you to preparing your proposal, brief proposal, while you are looking for PhD admission or postdoc consent from your potential supervisor or professor. And after 1 year of taking your PhD admission, 1.5 years, then obviously you will be going for detailed proposal, and this is the detailed proposal. It will help you how we can draw a research proposal. Then these are some top tier journals. That is also a summary of literature. You can test your literature accordingly, and this is the fact sheet. I hope this will help you, and I wish you best of luck. And all these files will be uploaded in the description of this lecture. And I will see you in my next episode, and I wish you best of luck. Stay blessed.